Deep in a secluded forest on the outskirts of Minooka, Illinois, is Aux Sable Cemetery, an old burial ground with a long history of ghost stories and legends. The remote cemetery was originally used by Native Americans and later became the final resting place for some of the area's first settlers. Some locals say the cemetery isn't haunted at all, while others have reported ghost sightings and strange encounters on the road and near an old receiving vault on the property. The cemetery is allegedly haunted by the ghost of a young girl who was said to be murdered on the grounds a long time ago, but are these stories true or just urban legends? This is the scary story of Aux Sable Cemetery. If the haunted legends are true, the cemetery's dark and mysterious history of desecration and grave robbing could be to blame. Up until the 1830s, the forest surrounding the cemetery was a settlement inhabited by the Potawatomi Indian tribe who favored the land for its natural resources. The creek that flows beneath the gravel road was used for drinking water, and the cemetery itself was believed to be an Indian burial mound. It has been said that when the white settlers arrived in the 1830s, many of the Native American graves were dug up and robbed of artifacts. As early as 1835, the graves of natives were allegedly dug up and discarded like trash when settlers began using the northeast section of the cemetery to bury their families. Although it is very possible the cemetery was a former Indian burial mound that was desecrated by the settlers, it's unclear whether or not the story is true or simply made up. The area was in fact a Native American settlement, but I wasn't able to find any historical records confirming the site was once a burial mound. A memorial plaque inside the cemetery commemorates the families of the early settlers, but does not mention the natives who were said to be buried on the grounds. But if the stories are true and the graves of natives really were disturbed a long time ago, it could play a major role in the paranormal activity people have experienced while visiting the cemetery. Aux Sable Cemetery is home to some of the oldest graves in the county, with some tombstones dating back to the 1830s. The first burial on record took place in 1835 when Joshua Ridgway buried his wife Sarah there after she died in a house fire at the young age of 25. Some of the older gravestones are badly worn and broken after being knocked over by vandals, but many remain in excellent condition with readable names and dates. The cemetery is still active today and contains over 1,000 burials. The oldest graves are located in the northeast corner by the entrance, and the west side of the cemetery contains a large number of open plots and more recent burials. Graves with the names Tabler, Wally, and Kreider are seen throughout the cemetery and are all descendants of the area's first settlers. One notable grave is the tombstone of Mary Ann Hess Kreider, which displays a Daughter of the American Revolution plaque. Mary Ann's father, George Balzer, was a Revolutionary patriot who served as General Washington's bodyguard and helped him cross the Delaware during a fierce battle. Balzer was later incarcerated at a British POW camp on Long Island and was one of the only men to survive the imprisonment. Like many older cemeteries dating back to the 1800s, there are quite a few infants buried on the grounds. Child deaths were very common in the 19th century due to the lack of medical treatment for deadly diseases like scarlet fever and tuberculosis. One grave in particular is often said to be the young girl behind some of the haunted legends and ghost sightings at the cemetery. This weathered grave is the final resting place of Adeline Stevenson, a 6-year-old Scottish girl who passed away in 1853 from causes unknown. Adeline is buried near 3 of her younger siblings, who all passed away under the age of 2. Her oldest sibling, Marie Stevenson, is also buried in the cemetery and died in 1963 at the incredible age of 100. It's unclear why Adeline is believed to be the girl behind the creepy ghost stories, but the eerie legends have persisted for decades. Visitors have reported seeing a young girl about the same age as Adeline wandering the cemetery grounds in a white dress. These sightings have occurred at night and also during the day. One legend claims the ghost is a girl who was murdered in the cemetery and buried on the grounds, and while that's certainly possible, I was unable to find any historical records documenting the alleged crime. Another legend says the girl's ghost roams the cemetery because the headstone was stolen from her gravesite. It's unknown if the stolen headstone belonged to Adeline or someone else, but it was eventually recovered and returned to its rightful place at the cemetery. The mysterious ghost is also believed to be responsible for lowering the windows of vehicles parked inside the cemetery, even when the keys are no longer in the ignition. This is said to occur mostly after dark, but there have been reports of it happening in the middle of the day. In 2013, 2 women who visited the cemetery during the day witnessed the car windows come down on their own after parking and removing the keys from the ignition. The frightened driver turned the car on again and closed the windows, but moments later, the windows came down again after she exited the vehicle. There have also been reports of vehicles failing to start and unlocked doors locking on their own for no reason. Another point of interest in Aux Sable Cemetery is the creepy abandoned storage shed that more than likely served as a receiving vault back in 1913 when it was built. From the 1800s into the early 1900s, receiving vaults were installed in cemeteries to temporarily store bodies during the winter months until the ground thawed for grave digging. The stone vaults were usually built into hillsides, but some were constructed above ground as standalone buildings, like this one. Receiving vault doors were made out of reinforced steel to protect the corpses from body snatchers and wild animals until spring arrived. This vault was later used as a storage shed by the cemetery's groundskeeper, but now remains empty with graffiti on the walls and broken pieces of tombstones all over the floor. Some people who visited the vault when the doors were still padlocked claim to have heard voices and strange noises coming from inside. Paranormal enthusiasts have also captured EVPs in and around the building, and others have even experienced ghost sightings near the vault's entrance. One man I spoke with during my visit to the cemetery told me that many years ago he saw the apparition of a tall man wearing a top hat standing next to the vault's door. The man slowly walked away from the vault and across the gravel road before fading into the cemetery on the other side. There are also stories of 3 underground tunnels that allegedly extend from a caretaker's house in the forest to the vault in the cemetery, but these stories are nothing more than urban legends. Another haunted legend centers around the long gravel road that extends half a mile through the forest to the cemetery. The legend says that if you park your vehicle on the old wooden bridge and turn the engine off, you can hear the sound of horses galloping down the road towards the cemetery. It is also said that vehicles have been known to suddenly break down when parking or driving down the road, and some visitors have even seen the ghost of a girl standing near the cemetery's gates in the distance. The secluded location of Aux Sable Cemetery has unfortunately led to vandalism, attempted grave robberies, and even satanic rituals that date all the way back to the 1960s. The massive tree in the center of the roundabout at the end of the road was said to be the former site of satanic rituals and witchcraft. Another area that was rumored to be used for bizarre rituals was a path at the end of the road that locals nicknamed the Satanic Trail. Some people have also reported seeing robed figures roaming the forest surrounding the cemetery, even in the middle of the day. One sighting was reported by a fisherman who saw 3 robed figures standing at the top of the hill while fishing alone in the creek below the cemetery. The fisherman quickly fled the scene in fear of his safety. I was also told by a cemetery visitor I spoke with that one of the trails at the end of the road leads to an old pet cemetery, but I have no idea if this claim is true or not. If you're aware of a pet cemetery in the forest, leave a comment below. Is Aux Sable Cemetery really haunted, or could the legends be nothing more than campfire ghost stories? During my daytime visit, I didn't experience anything paranormal, but the cemetery was definitely eerie, especially the receiving vault. The ghost sightings of a girl could certainly be true, but based on the lack of historical records, stories about disturbed Indian burials and a girl being murdered inside the cemetery are questionable. There's no doubt, though, that the long road leading to the cemetery is definitely creepy and gives you the sense that you are truly in the middle of nowhere. The road reminded me of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, but this location is far more secluded. Most of the paranormal activity at Aux Sable is said to occur late at night, but the cemetery is off limits after 8 p.m. when it closes. The property is frequently patrolled by law enforcement who are known to arrest anyone caught trespassing on the grounds after dark. Even if you are a skeptic of the paranormal, the cemetery is worth visiting for the history alone. Some of the gravestones are close to 200 years old and many are still fully intact. But I really want to know your thoughts on this allegedly haunted location. Have you ever been to Aux Sable Cemetery, and if so, did you see the ghost of the girl believed to be Adeline Stevenson? And did the windows of your vehicle come down on their own? If you know anything about the alleged burial mound or a murder that took place on the grounds, leave a comment below. And if you want to see more videos filmed on location like this one, you can help support the channel with a super thanks, or simply give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to see more of my upcoming scary videos. And if you like this video, check out the video or playlist you see on the screen.